This week, on the 1 year anniversary of Only in America, we remember the service of President George H. Walker Bush and my timely conversation with the leadership of Arizona State University, who echoes the 41st president's optimism about immigrants to America.
If they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
It's a very young democracy with a very high ideal. So the ideal as expressed in the core values of the American Constitution, think of it as an aspirational target. Equality, justice, liberty, opportunity. Those are all guaranteed, and they're all guaranteed to every person. Doesn't even say how you got here. Doesn't say anything about that. Just every person. I love the word person. That's the word for me, person.
That's my conversation with Dr. Michael Crow, president of Arizona State University. He also told me about his childhood and how moving around frequently as a kid taught him how to empathize with people of other cultures.
You just show up and you're just the new kid. Well, let's see if we can beat him up. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can steal his shoes, rip his jacket up, break the windows out of his house, steal his lunch money, whatever. I mean, it's just like constant. You learn, though, at the same time that education is really, really important, probably essential.
From the National Immigration Forum, I'm Ali Noorani with Only in America.
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 Only America.
Only in America.
Under the 16-year leadership of Dr. Michael Crow, Arizona State has become one of the top research universities in the world. It's boosted its roster of National Merit Scholars 61%, and claimed a spot on 3 separate rankings of America's best colleges. Meanwhile, the number of low-income Arizona freshmen enrolling each year has grown nearly 9-fold, and the university's population of minority students has jumped 62%. Furthermore, Dr. Crow has launched innovative new partnerships with corporate America. For example, 10,000 of his students are Starbucks employees, part of an agreement with the corporation to inspire opportunities for young workers. I interviewed Dr. Crow in September before an audience of Forum board members and senior staff. We touched on his experience as a, quote, serial outsider, his conviction that empathy is a vital component of the human spirit, and how it's lacking in leadership today. We began our conversation talking about the diversity of Arizona State.
This is a generally very complex and diverse place. We have 75,000 students on campus with us. 55,000 are on this campus, but we have 20,000 that float between our other 3 campuses that we run as a single institution. We have no hierarchy within the structure of the institution, no chancellors on campuses or anything like that. It's a very, very diverse student body of 12,750 freshmen, half white, half non-white. Socioeconomic diversity is totally replicant of the society. So 20% of our undergraduates are from families at or below the poverty line. We have 25,000 first-generation college undergraduates, up from 5,000. And so, but the most amazing thing is, this isn't wood, but knock on wood, our local culture is built on openness and fairness and equality. And so we don't have a lot of the issues that other schools have, even though we have massive diversity. We have 13,400 students from other countries here, 130 who have visas, hundreds of students that are here from other countries, parents from other countries that don't have visas. And so we call them special international students. And so we don't know what else to call them, so that's what we call them. Children of families trying to move their families forward, obviously. And so it's just kind of funny. Somebody said, well, do you have a lot of religious diversity? You said, well, yeah, we've got more Jewish kids than Brandeis has students.
So when you walk in the front of the campus, you see the university's charter and that first line of, as a university, believe in not who we exclude, but who we include.
Right.
When did that charter come into place, and what was the thinking and the process behind that?
So there's about 750 public universities in the United States. They're not exactly public policy successes. They graduate a tiny fraction of people that actually attend them. Most of the issues in the United States are about college completion. So we have more than 50% of Pell Grant recipients have no degree or any certificate whatsoever. More than 50% of everyone that's ever attended college has no degree. None. Nothing. It's an unbelievable thing. And so we were part of what I would call the generic public university. So you could have called us public university number 6 or 27 or 285. It didn't make any difference. We grew up from a teacher's college. We grew up and got assigned by public referendum. We became a university. So there was a resistance to becoming a university because there was only going to be one university here. So there was a public referendum. That meant that we ended up with no charter, no specific mission, just generic. Just let kids in, do the best you can, see if you can graduate a few of them. It's a ship of fools. And so in 2002, when I was appointed here, I proposed a vision in the first university-wide speech that I gave. And the vision was that charter. And the assumption was, could we convince the culture of the university and the state and the governance of the institution to move in that direction? And we were successful in getting people to want that specific 3-part charter. There were 3 parts to it. We don't believe that a public university should be measured based on who you exclude, but who you include and how they succeed. That might sound trivial, but the coin of the realm in higher education today, I used to be one of the provosts at a place called Columbia University in New York City. I used to be a faculty member there. I grew up there. I got tenure there. The coin of the realm was, did we get 40,000 applicants so we could admit 1,000 or whatever, 2,000? If we didn't, then we were losers. And so that is a contrarian logic to democratic success. The second element of the charter is, are you going to do research that benefits the public, or are you going to do research that actually is meaningful? Cesar Chavez had this famous line in one of his biographies that I read where these UCLA faculty members were wanting to come over to some migrant worker farm camp and study the migrant workers, and he was enraged. Like, what are you going to study? What do we eat? How many beans we eat? How much rice we eat? This is his quote. And he said, why don't you come with a solution? Why don't you come with something that's actually going to help us rather than just sort of looking at us? And so that second part of the charter means that. And then the last thing that we have is taking responsibility for the outcome of our community. So let's say that we have underperforming K through 12, which we do. And we blew up our entire College of Education, changed its entire structure, everything about it, became embedded in the community, built charter schools, launched charter schools, demonstration schools that graduate 100% of the students, no matter what their family income is or their ethnicity or their immigration status, doesn't make any difference. And so the point is that the university went from being a passive, generic, underperforming, underachieving institution to a non-passive, non-generic, active, purposed, culturally altered, student-centric, community-engaged university at scale, for which we're considered something between weirdo and pariah by many of the forces that exist in higher education. I'll give you one example. So we did a program, some of you have Starbucks cups, and so there's a company called Starbucks, very successful retailer of coffee and food. They have about just under 200,000 employees in the United States, and more than half of them went to college and never finished. So the chairman of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and I, we conjured up an idea. Could we devise a program that could help kids to finish college that are working at Starbucks? So we agreed that we would produce 25,000 graduates with degrees from Arizona State University. We have produced 2,500. We have 10,000 Starbucks employees as students right now, all online. Fantastic program. We got 4 billion media impressions when we announced that program. We didn't get one positive article from the higher education press. Losers.
But it fulfills the vision of your charter.
Yeah, and if they want to call us losers, so be it.
Right. I wanted to ask you about your experience growing up. So by the time you graduated from high school, you'd been to 17 different schools.
Yeah, moved 21 times that we lived longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of other places also.
What did that experience growing up, always moving, how does that shape your approach to higher education?
Well, I think one of the things, we lived a lot in California and Texas, Florida, Maryland, Virginia, Illinois, Missouri, New Hampshire, New York, all over the place. You learn moving around like that a lot about people. One, that everybody's basically the same drive, same ambition, same desires, same wants, same needs, same issues, same everything. And so you learn that really quickly. And then you learn also really quickly a lot about discrimination. So I don't know that I was ever discriminated because I was white, although I went to schools that were majority non-white. I know I was discriminated against because I was the new kid. I mean, I had the crap beat out of me so many times I can't even tell you, because you just show up and you're just the new kid. Well, let's see if we can beat him up. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can steal his shoes, rip his jacket up, break the windows out of his house, steal his lunch money, whatever. I mean, it's just like constant. So that's a form of unrest or unsettledness. You learn, though, at the same time that education is really, really important, probably essential. You even learn having so many teachers. Even as a kid, I realized that there were great teachers that were underpowered and underpowered teachers that were not capable of doing things. There was huge unevenness in educational attainment and educational outcomes. And so I think what I really began to see was this inequality of opportunity by just being able to observe so many different things and then other things that happened along the way as I was growing up and in the era that I was growing up. So I'm older than everyone here, I think, but Jose. He didn't laugh back there.
Right.
He just gave me a dirty look.
So you did an interview for Forbes, and they asked you, what are the 5 takeaways you hope students will gain from the university experience? And 4 out of the 5 were unsurprising to me, at least. One of them was really interesting. You said that you want students to have empathy.
Yes.
To succeed as a member of society, you need to have understanding for other people.
Yeah.
Does that come from that experience growing up?
Yeah, probably. I mean, empathy, if we had 50 more docile units of empathy in every human being, we wouldn't be having some of the issues that we have right now. Because right now, our lack of empathy is what, people have no understanding. They have no understanding about or willingness to accept on an empathetic basis the life experience of another person. And so I think moving around for me did give me this experience by all the friends I had or didn't have, or the people I was fighting with, or the people I was hanging around with. I did develop some understanding of, well, look at what that kid is going through. It didn't make any difference what ethnicity the kid was or what religion the kid was. I went to schools where the Protestant kids and the Catholic kids, just beat the hell out of each other over some religious differences. I lived for a while in a Chicago neighborhood of mostly Ukrainian and Lithuanian and Polish immigrants who were battling. So you learn, well, why are they doing that? I would often ask myself, well, what is this all about? And then once you started thinking about it, you could understand it. When I interview people, I'm obviously looking for character, intelligence, empathy. You could have both of those and very little empathy, and I got no desire to work with you. Because if you can't understand someone other than yourself, some life experience other than yours, then you don't know how to advance this kind of institution or society. So very important.
So, what ASU has done in the immigration debate, whether it's in Phoenix, at the state, and the federal level, has been incredibly remarkable. When you're talking to that DACA recipient or that dreamer, and you're hearing their story, what's going through your mind?
So mostly what's going through my mind is I know that I'm talking to, one, if they're talking to me, they are a highly ambitious kid who wants to do a lot with their life and their energy. They've already passed through at least 20 filters along the way that then, if they're standing in front of me, they somehow got through high school. Somehow, a lot of kids don't. A quarter of the kids in general don't get through high school. They somehow got to the university or got through the community college. They're somehow in the group wanting to talk to me. They're somehow the one that stepped up wanting to talk. So I know that I'm talking to a leader when I talk to that person. And I understand and I feel their experience. And so when I talk to them, what I say to them is I try to focus on not allowing the present circumstance of the lack of empathetic compassion in our country for their circumstance to overwhelm all of their thinking. And so what I generally try to focus on is, what do you want to achieve with your life? Let me tell you, you're going to achieve that. You're going to achieve that. If you stay focused on that visualization, if you stay focused on that view, you're going to achieve it. And we here at ASU, we're here to help you in every possible way that we can. Help you with resources, help you with pathway, help you with getting employed at the university, help you to get through your degree programs. I tend to focus on not in any way, for any reason, reducing your perception of your own potential. Yes, there's a hurricane around you, okay? Your family is disrupted. Your family's sitting in a state of legal limbo. Well, you're here. Somehow you're here. And so let's take advantage of every circumstance that you possibly can. And then that's what I try to focus on, taking advantage of circumstance, taking advantage of opportunity, taking advantage of this or this or this or this, and trying to figure out how to move things forward.
What are you optimistic about?
I'm optimistic about everything. I'm a big believer that yelling and shouting in the United States produces great outcomes. From the signing of the Constitution in 1789 to the outbreak of the Civil War over fundamental flaws in the implementation of our design, and then ultimately the Civil War. Well, there's a lot of shouting, a lot of dead people, and things got a lot better, but they didn't get perfect. So then another 100 years of protests later, demonstrations, more shouting, more this, more that, Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, all these things that emerged from all of that. So this is a very young democracy with a very high ideal. So the ideal as expressed in the core values of the American Constitution, think of it as an aspirational target. Equality, justice, liberty, opportunity. Those are all guaranteed, and they're all guaranteed to every person. Doesn't even say how you got here. Doesn't say anything about that. Just every person. I love the word person. That's the word for me, person. Are you a person? It's all for you. And so I'm unbelievably optimistic because of our kids here. So what I see, whether they're DACA kids, whether they're kids from Arizona, kids from wherever, they have, in my overall view, higher levels of empathy, deeper understanding of the idea of equality, less tolerance for bigotry and injustice than I think previous generations. Somebody said to me, "Don't you think the country's filled with racists?" I said, no, it used to be. It used to be filled with racists. Now it might only be like 20% racist, and it used to be 80% racist. And so that's huge progress. Now, how do I know that? Look at the outcome of national elections, local elections, leadership positions, things that are happening, fantastic things that are going on. And so I have very high aspirations for the future of the country. I have, some worries, as we all do, about some of the things that we're going through. Mostly our inability to make crucial decisions in a timely fashion, because we've allowed the arguments to move away from the actual merit of the argument to some other game. It's like there's two games. Mm-hmm. There's advancing the country, which is let's fulfill the obligations of our duty to advance against the Constitution as the aspirational goal. And then there's like this other game. It's like there's the real game, and then there's this red-blue paintball. So red-blue paintball is a very destructive game. Both sides right now, I can hear it in both sides, want to eliminate the other side. It was one of the exact reasons the country was formed, so that not one side could win, so that all views could be synthesized and advanced. And so that right now we're in a particularly complicated moment. You know as well as I know that there is a lot of talk and a lot of thinking and a lot of action going on now that's really derivative of, I guess I would call it identity politics, but not in the way that some people use that word. I'm not talking about red, blue, red, blue, red, blue. Everything's being filtered. There's a blue television network. There's a red television network. There's red commentators, blue commentators. I mean, I get sick of all that.
But do you think there's a big population in the middle?
There is a big population in the middle, the purple, and the people that can hear a view from one side. So I'll take libertarians. Mm-hmm. So anybody here a libertarian?
We're all a little confused.
No. So probably all of you are actually libertarians, and let me tell you how. So I stood in front of, you are. No, you think you're not. And so let me tell you how you are. So I stood in front of a group of libertarians not too long ago, real libertarians. So libertarians are generally conservative, but not all. They generally have certain views about the way that they're very independent-minded and so forth and so on. I said, well, I'm a libertarian, but I'm not like you. You're selfish libertarians. Mm-hmm. Your libertarianism is built around you. Well, I want to carry this, or I want to do that, or I want to have this freedom. I don't want anybody infringing on me. And I said, my libertarianism is multi-generational libertarianism. I want to make sure that I do not take away from the benefits of liberty of any future generation. And when you start talking about libertarianism in that perspective, you look at children differently, you look at the environment differently, you look at decisions differently. I can't do anything, so I need to protect the liberty. If I take away the liberty, the freedom of decision making, liberty, the right to opportunity, if I take away the freedom of choice of anyone, any person, anything, by limiting human capital or depleting natural capital, I then am against success. And so what's funny is I think that in those conversations, I'm able to get about half their brains thinking in a different way. About half of them then get tired, but that would leave a quarter who think maybe we need a different definition of libertarianism, because the present definition is just way too selfish.
So is that one of the reasons why you started the Public Service Academy that's now run by Brett Hunt, who actually used to work with us? I visited him and one of his students yesterday or the day before. What was the thinking behind that?
So the thinking behind the Public Service Academy was, so all the special scholarship programs that we have are for mostly two types of individuals above academic scholarships or need scholarships: athletes and future military officers. Mm-hmm. I thought, okay, great. So we got athletes, that's good. I was an athlete in college. I had some scholarship support to be an athlete. That was very helpful to me. And then military officers, great. We're producing officers. I don't think all the officers should come from West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy, broader spectrum. But we didn't have a program producing people on the same kind of basis: intensive leadership training, intensive public service training, who would then come out not as military officers per se, but as public service officers, public servants. And so we created the Public Service Academy. We now have 600 fully scholarship students in it from all around the country. They co-train with the military sometimes. They have ROTC, like they're called the Next Generation Leadership Corps instead of the Reserve Officer Training Corps. Now that we've got ours up and running and we're graduating our first students, we're going to facilitate trying to build 6 or 7 of these at other universities. And so for us, it's a really important thing. And then in the case of Brett, for us, he was kind of like out of Hollywood Central Casting, grew up in an agricultural setting here in Arizona, served his country in combat in the Army in Iraq, came back, then again went into public service in the State Department, went to Mexico City, worked advancing the interests of Mexican and American relationship, did a great job at all those things, and then now he's running our Public Service Academy. So for us, it's a good outcome.
And it's amazing the impact that it leaves on the students. One of the students that I talked to graduate from Portugal sees public service in a completely different way now and sees it as a way that defines who she is.
Yes. The kids that are self-selecting for that, the students that are coming into that, they compete to win the scholarships, they compete to get in there. Part of it is, rather than just talk about the way that you wish the world should be, or talk about what you think people should do, why don't you do it? And why don't you make it a part of your college experience, a part of your training and so forth? We have students from dozens and dozens of different majors. They do internships, public sector, private sector. They go away like to ROTC camp, but they go away to leadership camp, problem-solving camp, and public service camp, and all those kinds of things. So,
Last question for you. Name of the podcast is Only in America.
Only in America.
So finish this sentence. Only in America. ...
Only in America will the ideal of a truly egalitarian democracy across the full breadth of humanity really have the rooted opportunity to grow and prosper as an example for everybody else. And what I mean by that is this is a truly unbelievably diverse country. Diversity here is beyond belief. Cultural backgrounds, economic backgrounds, everything imaginable. We have this ideal that we're working toward, the longest standing constitution on the planet. We've been struggling, fighting, working our way through these things. And so only in America can that happen. I was talking about this the other day. It's a longer answer than you want, but I travel all over the world. Well, you guys argue a lot, although you just all seem like there's something wrong over there. So what do you mean something wrong? What do you mean argue? There's no arguments in Russia. There's no arguments in China. There's no arguments in Cuba. There's going to be some arguments in Venezuela, where you're from, Pakistan. Not very many arguments. A lot of arguments here, all good. All good. You work it out, you move forward. So only in America can you argue, make it good, and move forward.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Okay.
Really
right.
Appreciate it. Dr. Michael Crow is president of Arizona State University. You can read about his career, his philosophies on education and immigration at our website, immigrationforum.org. And while you're there, make sure Only in America comes into your inbox every single week.
Support for the National Immigration Forum comes from the James Irvine Foundation, expanding opportunity for the people of California, and from the Carnegie Corporation of New York, established in 1911 by Andrew Carnegie to promote the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding. In an election debate with Ronald Reagan back in April of 1980, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, the late President George H.W. Bush responded to a question from a young student in the audience.
My name is David Grossberg, and I'd like to know, do you think the children of illegal aliens should be allowed to attend Texas public schools free, or do you think that their parents should pay for their education?
Who are you addressing that to?
I think you're first in this.
He was looking right at you. I said he was. Look, I'd like to see something done about the illegal alien problem that would be so sensitive and so understanding about labor needs and human needs that problem wouldn't come up. But today, if those people are here, I would reluctantly say I think they would get whatever it is that they're, what the society is giving to their neighbors. But the problem has to be solved. The problem has to be solved because as we have kind of made illegal some kinds of labor that I'd like to see legal, we're doing two things. We're creating a whole society of really honorable, decent, family-loving people that are in violation of the law, and secondly, we're exacerbating relations with Mexico. The answer to your question is much more fundamental than whether they attend Houston schools, it seems to me. I don't want to see if they're living here, I don't want to see a whole thing of 6- and 8-year-old kids being made, one totally uneducated and made to feel that they're living with outside the law. Let's address ourselves to the fundamentals. These are good people, strong people. Part of my family is a Mexican.
If you have a minute, track down the YouTube video of this debate. The emotion and energy with which President Bush speaks it's really something to see. But the views of 41 back then, echoed by Dr. Crow today, are not endorsed by our nation's current leadership. As the drama at the U.S.-Mexico border reaches a stalemate, reality is settling in for all parties. There is no easy solution. In fact, the situation facing migrants from Central America worsened this past week in Tijuana. Rains transformed what was a shelter at a dusty sports complex into a muddy field, leading the government to move migrants to a concert venue further from the border. And Tijuana's mayor voiced his frustration as the U.S. has transformed the city into something of a refugee camp. Mindful of the shift in congressional leadership coming in January, some Republicans started to sound more like their predecessors in seeking a bipartisan and constructive solution. Here's Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who's just back from Guatemala and Mexico, speaking on Fox News.
Well, I think the biggest problem in this area relative to Congress is that Congress has been taking the approach that it has to be all or nothing. Remember 5 years ago when we had the big effort, the Gang of Eight bill that moved forward. The problem with that is they amalgamated 100 different ideas, lumped them all together, and then said, here you go, you have to take all of this package or you get none of it. Every reform that we, the Gang of Eight, have proposed, or nothing gets passed at all. I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think if we took it one bite at a time, we'd get more finished.
But the Trump administration continues to slow walk asylum applications, and the military deployment to the border will likely extend through the holidays. As Mexican-American broadcaster Jorge Ramos, an Only in America guest from earlier this year, wrote in Time, quote, Trump finally has his wall. And finally, a word of thanks. We started this podcast, Only in America, 1 year ago this week, and I've had the honor of talking to some amazing people from all corners of the country. Take a minute to shoot me an email at anoorani@immigrationforum.org to let me know what you think of Only in America and what you think we should do in year 2. In signing off for this week, we honor the service of President George H. Walker Bush and remember his commitments to American values. Thank you, Mr. President. Many thanks for helping produce the show. As always, go to the staff of the National Immigration Forum, in particular Regina Medina, Emily Chow, and Kathleen Farrell. I'm Ali Noorani. See you next week for Only in America.